Welcome to Carmen's Lovely Reports. And today I just want to start off with a word that God put in my heart before we continue with my friend here. In Revelations chapter 12, verse 11, they triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. And my friend's story has to do with the topic we must discuss. It's about unforgiveness. And God has shown me that by way of dreams that there's many women right now that are walking around with resentments and unforgiveness and deep wounds. And most of them are in the church. A lot of them are leaders, and a lot of them are hiding behind a veil of religion. And as far as also in the world, as a matter of fact, the other day I went evangelizing. I'm just going to throw this one in, that I was able to reach out to a couple of a lady, a woman, a mom and a daughter at Aldi's. And I was just talking to her and presenting the gospel of Jesus Christ. And her daughter ended up giving a testimony, but the mom rejected the prayer of salvation. And that night, God gave me the dream that I saw a group of women that I was ministering to them. And a lot of the women, I did a calling of forgiveness, that a lot of these women were having deep wounds and unforgiveness in their hearts. So that being said, I have this is why I have this urgency to talk about this topic. And today I have the privilege to have my dear friend Sunny, and she is my guest, and she has a testimony that will reach women all around in a story of resilience, a story of forgiveness, and how God took her out from darkness into the sun. And her name is a perfect symbol of that. Her name is Sunny, and you started out with a statement that was really, resounding to me and impacting. It says on your testimony, it says that Satan seeks to destroy family relationships with our earthly father so that we will not seek the Father. And that is a powerful revelation there. Can you just begin to explain how it all started at home behind closed doors, and how your father began the behavior?
Well, I can first start with that statement. If you have a fractured or a non-existent relationship with your earthly father, and there's no connection, there's no compassion, no communication, no affection, no feeling of belonging, just things like that, no trust established. I mean, you can't imagine, it's harder to imagine, let's just say. It just takes you a little longer to realize that God is not like that. It just takes longer to develop a relationship with God. In my personal experience, it takes a little longer because it's hard for you to fathom what the Heavenly Father is like if you've only experienced a certain thing with it. But yeah, just kind of going back to the beginning, I guess. My family was broken by the time I was 3. And prior to that, we did go to church. They were active members in the church. His family, his roots were, his family was not only active members, they actually funded the building of a church. And they were very well known and very prominent in the community, very well respected individuals, exterior, on the outside. But unfortunately, somewhere along the line, he started entertaining things that he shouldn't entertain. And there was certain magazines under the bed with very young individuals in them. And an addiction his entertainment turned into addiction turned into an obsession. And so he wanted my mother to have 12 children. You could kind of get an idea where that was going to go. Just to kind of give everybody an idea, by the time I was 4 years old, I was already groomed. And I knew what certain acts were that only adults should know. And I already knew it. You know what I mean? I knew what it was. And there was 3 of us there subject to this. It wasn't just me. He did get married later on, and then unfortunately her children were subject to it as well. But I won't go on about them. I'll just focus on, my experience. But so yeah, this behavior ended up, he just became so paranoid about We found out that we just stopped going to church, and we started gradually, little by little, isolating us from the world, the church community. We weren't allowed to socialize or have friends or even talk to neighbors or anything, of course, because, we had to keep everything on the down low of what was going on.
So you had to be isolated.
Yes, we had to be isolated, and there wasn't very many outlets either. So it was really, the isolation was really hard because there wasn't an out. I mean, there wasn't friends, obviously, but there was not a phone. There's no TV. So for a while, it was very isolated, and we were just kind of stuck there, kind of at his mercy and will.
And you mentioned that there was multiple types of abuse.
I mean, there was the physical abuse. He would go into fits of rage over the littlest thing. And so there was the physical violence that was pretty much the norm. It could happen on a dime. And there was a lot of mental abuse. There was sexual abuse. I mean, I was forced to walk around the house naked, so it was very humiliating. I was very self-conscious. So my mom, she ended up pretty much having enough of that. She put up with as much as she could put up with, but he was very controlling with her and didn't want her to have friends either. And, pictures were evil, makeup and nail polish and dressing nice and looking nice, whatever. It was of the devil, right? And so he would allow her to put birds' nests on the wall. Things had to be all natural, it's crazy. But, so that just kind of gives you a little glimpse.
Despite all that, you said the biggest thing that affected you through your childhood was loneliness.
It was, the fear and the trauma was really bad, but the biggest thing that, affected me anyway, we're all different, but just being so lonely, you know what I mean? I had my siblings, but we were all terrified. There was no support group of peers my own age or anyone I could you know what I mean? So there wasn't anything like that going on. I would just, any time that I could, I would just sneak off to my room whenever he would allow me to, and just, that's pretty much was my time, just being alone.
And so that led to your mom,
Yeah.
right? And she
kept trying to escape, and at first, she just was like, well, I'm taking them and I'm out of here, and he threatened her with a shotgun and told he would unalive her. And so she pretended to take us shopping one day, and instead she took us to my aunt's house and left, and she never came back. So there was no more buffer anymore. No more. There was only so much she could do to protect us, but at least there was somebody there, even somebody just to witness that we were alive,
Which was your aunt, right? Is that where you said you ended up?
Oh, later on, no, I ended up at my grandparents' house. I'm not sure which time you were referring to.
Okay.
So she pretended she was going shopping, and instead she went to my aunt's house and she dropped us off under the apple tree, and that just stuck in my memory. And she left, and she never came back. So I didn't find her until later in life, into adulthood. So that was it. She was gone.
And that opened the door to abandonment.
Yes.
That's how the enemy works also when it comes to generational curses. You'll bring, things like trauma, like that's abandonment. And then later on you grow up feeling that rejection.
Yes.
Okay, so years later, there was that incident going forward. There was that incident.
Yes.
Well, before you mentioned that you day to day was survival mode since since you were abandoned, and then you guys went into that fear, living in fear, right?
Yeah, that was pretty much the norm for us. One of the few emotions that we knew, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Just living in fear, and just I dreaded nighttime, of course, because I never knew when he was going to come to my room. All the locks were removed from the doors, so there was no control over that coming to my room. And of course, because of all that trauma, I would wet the bed a lot, and if I wet the bed, of course, I was getting a beating because of that. So it got to a point where they would just put me on the bathroom floor to sleep. And
Wow.
so, yeah. And then after that, there was an incident where he was busted, I guess you could say, for taking one of us out to the barn. And so we were removed from the home and we went to live with our grandparents at that point for a few years.
And you felt safe, you said. You felt
Yes, we finally, finally had a reprieve. The stress levels were lower, and they did honor his wishes. I guess he had some level of control over them, but they did honor his wishes to not allow us to have a social life outside of extended family, which rarely ever came around to begin with, but at least we were allowed to see them on occasion. But we were safe, and that was the main thing. And I was doing really well in school and was excited about learning. And I actually remembered going to church as a young child, and I started reading the Bible and finding comfort in that. And I was just absolutely, I was just really loving it, honestly. I mean, I didn't get to the level of having a relationship with God, but I was certainly seeking after and reading and finding comfort in that. But
that's what you said, the seed. That's how the seed was planted.
the seed was planted as a young child. I mean, I have memories going back to being in a crib. And so I don't know how I could remember that far back, but I did anyway. And so I remember a lot about being preschool or whatever it is. I had a lot of memories of that and going to church and absolutely loving the Bible stories. And so that's what got me back into it.
Yeah.
Into reading. And there wasn't distractions and fear. So I felt like I was starting to come out of my shell just a little bit there and blossom some, having that level of freedom.
And then unfortunately, the sense of that security you wrote, it ended.
Yes. My dad insisted on moving in with them. He was not legally allowed to have us, but for whatever reason, maybe he manipulated them or scared them to death, like he did my mom. I don't know. But he pushed himself into the situation, inserted himself, and he moved in. And so then the daily returned. It was really difficult. There was, as long as my grandparents were there, because they had multiple homes in different states, and so you know what I mean. They wouldn't always be there, but whenever they were there, I felt safer anyway. They were a little bit of a buffer there, but yeah, the stress levels were I stopped reading the Bible as much. My schoolwork started failing. I was doing I was starting to do really bad in school, and I loved learning. So, but that'll happen. But as the years went on, he became more and more bold with resuming the abuse, and he became even very physically violent right in front of them, So it just got to that point. I guess he just, that's who he was.
And how old were you by then?
Well, when we went to go live with them, I was around 7 years old. So I was there until I was just turning 11. I literally just turned 11 before the next phase happened.
Yeah, when you said that your dad unlawfully took you, it was around 11, right?
Yeah, and I'll just interject something in between all that. There was times when we were living there at my grandparents' house that he would, whatever they had going on in their lives, if they were having relatives over and things like that, they wanted the house empty. So he would take us over to Old Farm where we grew up, and he had it rented out at that point, and so we were living in the barn.
Wow.
Yeah, we had to live in the barn. Yeah. So then, anyway, I won't get into all that, but it was just stuff like that that was just so wild. But so just when I thought it couldn't get any crazier, I had literally it was only a few months after I turned 11 years old, and he took us. He unlawfully took us. You're going to call it kidnapping or trafficking. Nowadays they would call it trafficking. But anyway, he took us because he wasn't legally allowed to have us, and threw us all in the van. And he's like, well, I mean, there's no way else to say it. He's like, I'm going to get you a husband. And I started crying, which is something that I tried to never ever do in front of him, because that would warrant getting a beating if you cry. So, but I started crying. I couldn't help it. And I was just like, but I'm only 11 years old, So Initially he left the country because he was trying to let things cool down, in case people were looking for us, just because we weren't attending school anymore. And he went to Canada. So we were in Canada for a little bit. And then from there, he came back to the States, and we were literally driving from state to state to state. I mean, I've been to 48 states. So that kind of tells you right there.
Wow.
Yeah. So he would go from state to state to state. And then he kind of ended up in Florida because, well, 2 states, but I'll just start with Florida. I'll just try to be brief as possible, just not going crazy with everything because it's too much information. But the very first thing that he wanted to do was start stalking first he stalked my mom, and then he stalked my stepmom, and he was trying to abduct my stepmom's kids. He was like, well, I'm going to get your brother, and he's going to be your husband. Yep. He put a tracking device on his car. He was following him all around. He would go to colleges as well. And we would just sit out in the parking lot for hours and hours, and he would watch the girls, and he would send us kids out there and try to lure them to the girl. We would always, my brother and I would always foil it. I mean, I'm not trying to laugh, but sometimes that's just how I deal with things, is I laugh. I'm kind of like the Chandler in the show Friends, where you laugh because that's all you can do. It's just so insane. But yeah, so anyway, so yeah, he would try to do that. He was, like I said, but he would try to, he would stalk our step siblings, which were her kids. They were not blood related. But anyway, he would send us to their house to knock on the window and shine a flashlight in the window and try to get their attention, to get them to come outside and try to get them to, which we were not having any of that. You know what I mean? We would go and actually hang out with them for a while and then tell them, hey, he's around, and give them a warning. So they needed to call their whatever they needed to do. But that was an opportunity for us kids to actually see this type of our siblings. I call them my sibling. I hate calling them my step sibling, but just for technical reasons. But we would see them. But anyway, yeah. So he would just stalk cousins. They didn't even know. Some don't even know to this day that they were being stalked. And one of them, he unfortunately was successful temporarily, and he was in the van and we were driving off. And I can't remember how or what, but something happened and he turned around and took him back. But this was just normal. This is normal. So every day I didn't know what was going to happen. And I guess I should let everybody know that when he ran off with us, we ended up living in that van for 2 years.
Living like a fugitive is what you stated there.
We were living in the van. We were taking baths in buckets. We were eating canned food. We had to go a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times, especially in the beginning, because I guess he was kind of afraid that we might run off or something. We had to go, and it became normal. We had to go to the bathroom in bread bags, depending on what it was, or cups. We'd have to go to the bathroom in the van, and I'd have to bathe right in front of him.
Wow.
And he'd make me be in my panties. When I was in the back, like when my brother would sleep in the seats, but in the back there was a bed, and I unfortunately had to be back there stuck with my dad. So I'd wake up and he'd be on top of me. I still had my clothes on, like my panties or whatever, but it was just him trying to, gratify himself. And I would push him off, and he'd punch me in the stomach. Like I lost my breath. Like, I don't want to go into all of it, but that just kind of lets you know this stuff, what's going on. And I know that there's other people out there that have been through a whole lot worse than me. I've met plenty of women that have been through much worse than that. So, but I'm just telling you, I can relate on some level.
And you're here.
And I'm here.
You're here. You were a victim, but you were a survivor that came out of this, because now there's other women, like you said, that are unalive.
Yeah.
Like kidnapping.
Or that were violated even more. Yes. And oh my gosh, like I know personally people like that. And so that went on for 2 years, just absolute madness, terrorizing these women, just not leaving my mother alone. Like he would literally drive up and she would be out jogging, doing her morning exercise, and he would roll right up beside her. Like she never knew when he was going to show up in her life to terrorize her. And so it was the same with, my stepmom. who was only there for a couple of years, but my goodness, he terrorized her so much. And it was just all crazy. So finally, none of that worked out. So we end up going back to square one, which was moving back into the old farmhouse where it all started. You know what I mean? So we moved in there,
I said all had to go back to that farmhouse.
Yes, yep. And for whatever reason, nobody in the family intervened. And yes, they were aware.
I was going to ask you, I was going to ask you, why did no one in the family intervene? Why didn't they want to intervene?
I asked myself that for a long time, and I did talk to one of my grandparents about it later in life. And I mean, at first she was the one that approached me actually. And she was like, well, just, make sure you don't ever talk about whatever happened growing up. So she was aware of something, right? And then later when I tried to talk to her and to let her know what happened, she told me that I was lying. But I was like, well, clearly you didn't want me to talk about it. And they knew what was going on because there was a whole court case going way, way back where there was a death of an infant due to a sex act. So there was actually, he actually did that, but they covered for him somehow and he never went to prison over it. So I guess things were different back in the 70s. I don't know. They were very wealthy and well-to-do and maybe they, I don't know. I don't want to assume things, but that part's a fact.
Okay.
So for her to pretend that she didn't know what was going on, I seen the court case. I seen the documentation.
They wanted to protect. It's like they were protecting their name, or they didn't want to.
It sure seemed that way. Like I said, I just want to tell everybody. I just want to be careful about what I say. I know I said a lot, but in the sense of it's all just factual because I have forgiven. I have forgiven these people, and I did forgive them a long time ago. And that's why it's so hard for me. That's why I pushed off doing this testimony. I knew I had to do it for a good decade. I knew I had to do it, but I really wanted to push it off because I didn't want to drudge up the past, and I didn't want to seem like I hadn't forgiven them. And it's just really hard to talk about something factual. It's just so horrible. But anyway, I did pray for their salvation, all of them, and I did forgive them. So I just want to say that, interject that there. And I don't want to hurt anybody. They've already passed away, but I still don't want to hurt anybody else who's living still in the family. And I don't want to humiliate anyone, but I mean, so here we are. Okay, so we're back on the farm where it all started.
Yes.
I guess you asked all the questions you had asked. Okay, so the only thing that I had, literally the only thing that I had from my time at my grandparents' house was two things. I had, it was like a stuffed animal. It was an adorable doggy, a little adorable dog that doubled as a radio. There's a little zipper and a radio and a battery inside. I don't know if they still make those, but anyway, so it doubled as a radio and it had a Bible. So that's all I had. And since we didn't have any other outlet, that just became really a treasured outlet of mine. And I stumbled on a Christian radio station, and that was really uplifting for me. I think it was like Dr. James Dobson and a bunch of other Christian music, old school Christian music back then. So it was great. Whenever I could bring alone, and it was just crazy because I think you could see a change in me because, I mean, I would read the Bible in front of them, you know what I mean? But the music, I would just do that in my room. I don't remember if I was hiding it or not hiding it at this point, because that was a long time ago. But yeah, he did see me read the Bible, and he didn't like it. And he would sneer at me and tell me that I was turning into someone who was self-righteous. Yeah, he was not happy about it. Huh?
He didn't like that you were
reading the Bible. Yeah, he didn't want me in that. Didn't want me in it. Obviously, we know it's the spirit in him that didn't want that.
Yes, that's what it was. The evil spirit that didn't want you to, because when the devil knows once the word gets in you, that's a seed that grows into a tree, and then you become fruitful. He didn't want that.
Exactly. And also it was a source of comfort, and all sources of comfort seem to just be eliminated. So
wow.
And I think that's a common tactic with people who are groomed. If you get them early enough and you groom them early enough to be fully reliant on you for everything, and just make them so lonely and vulnerable that, well, you'll make a lot of mistakes later in life because you're so vulnerable. You know what I mean? You're so naive and you look for love in the wrong places, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that goes hand in hand with that. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of what happened. Sort of along those lines, sort of. So I was getting into that, and as my love for God was growing, then that happened. He wasn't happy about it, and he was just right away. At that point, it was around that time frame. I was like 13 years old, and he put an ad in the newspaper or whatever. He put an ad up for troubled teen boys, like to take them in, under the guise of wholesome country living on a farm. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a real farm at that time, by the way. Not that that's relevant, but that's how he put it. And there was like 2 responses at like 2 different occasions for troubled teen boys. So he took them in, and yes, we had spare bedrooms in this big old farmhouse, but he put them in my bed. Yeah, he set it up. I got threatened over it, so choice no matter. But anyway, I'm just going to leave it at, suffice to say, at 13 years old, I was lost. And then when he took that one back home, then he brought the other one in because I hadn't gotten pregnant. So he brought the other one in. He wanted me to get pregnant. So I hope everybody's drawing the picture here, how he wanted to have a lot of kids. And since his ex-wives didn't produce the kids, and I was going to produce the kids for him.
Like he had an obsession with that to want to
Yes,
have.
because they would call him a minor attracted person. Yeah. So, yes.
Well,
Yep.
and that's how the whole human trafficking works.
They'll use people as breeders. So I felt like I was a breeder.
And you mentioned that the last boy or the teenage boy that left after that,
Yeah, I freaked out. I snapped. I had enough. And I just snapped. And I mean, like, it was just happened in an instant. Obviously, I didn't sit around thinking about it and get madder and madder or more stressed or whatever. Just, it happened in a second. I took a mirror and I smashed it, and I just, I took it to my wrist, and I was going to go all the way around, and I didn't. But anyway, yeah, I took it to my wrist really quick, and it was just everywhere. And my dad, I was standing over the railing because it's a couple stories high, old, northern style home. And he looking down at him, and I guess I was looking for comfort or whatever, or help. And no, he did not take me to the hospital to get stitches or anything like that. He would never do that. But he was so angry at me. He sneered at me, and he was so angry that I dared to I would do something like that. You know what I mean? And then he literally walked out and left me in that condition, bleeding everywhere, and took the kid home. Yeah. I mean, this happened. Okay, I'll just jump back real quick. The first time around when I was just to give you an idea of this, he did everything he could to never take us to get any kind of medical attention or any regular checkups and things like that. That was normal, right? When I was 4 years old, I was helping him, he'd put us to work, whatever. And he wanted me to take a lid off of a paint can. And I was 4 years old with little hands. And I was taking the screwdriver trying to get the lid off the gallon of paint, you know what I mean? Anyway, I can't talk right now. But I couldn't do it. And so he took the paint spur and just whopped me over the head. And to this day, I have this big old scar where there's no hair on my head. But yeah, it just opened me right up, and I had to use my baby sister, the adopted sister I told you about before. Anyway, I took her diaper and put it on my head, and we finally got back home, and he wouldn't take me to the hospital to get stitches, he just didn't want to go, and he put me on the toilet seat, and he heated up the hot glue gun. He was going to glue my head shut. That's what his intention anyway. And my stepmom at that point was freaking out because she was an RN. And she's like, no, she has to get stitches. She's going to get infected and stuff like that. And I just, but this is to the level that he would go to just not get caught. You know what I mean? Because he's scared to talk. So anyway, fast forward, I'm bleeding everywhere. And so I came to my senses, and I was just praying so hard and just crying to God. I was like, just please forgive me for wanting to just end it all, and please save my life. And right then and there, boom, in an instant, I just felt this sudden great peace and comfort came into me,
You had an encounter.
So yeah, that got me through. That got me through, and it closed up by morning somehow. It was pretty deep. I don't even know how it did it, but anyway, other than God, I don't know how. So yeah, he didn't check on me, nothing like that. But I won't go into all that because there's almost 20 years of information I could just keep going on about. So I'm going to try to stick to the point. So that got me through. That great sense of peace and comfort got me. And so the next step after that was literal darkness. I mean, had the power shut off to the house to appear that nobody was living there. And he put drywall up over the windows and the sliding doors. He drywalled them up, plastered them in, whatever, you know. And the house was like so dark. So we were walking around with flashlights and candles and things like that. But most of the time we would just walk around and we just knew the house in the dark. We just would walk around in the dark.
You were a hostage then.
Yeah. And at that point, my younger brother and I were not allowed out of the house, like for years on end. We weren't allowed to go outside.
And you have a brother that's autistic. And
Yeah.
how did you deal with that? Him being autistic, and it says that you wrote a part where your younger brother who's autistic and you were no longer allowed to go outside for years. But then he had attempted to, was he the one that attempted to run away and try to find?
My older brother, he attempted to run away. I mean, he ran away to my grandparents' house, but they drove him right back over just like that. They returned him, like, yeah, they covered for him and like for my dad and whatever, I don't know, but they returned him. Maybe he threatened them, I don't know. So they returned him immediately. So that just increased and solidified the hopelessness of the situation. And then later on, something was going on that my older brother and I did not witness, but it just happened really fast, whatever. And I didn't know till years later what was going on. But anyway, he handed my dad the wrong tool. And so my dad cut him up with a trowel, and then he took a broom and he kept trying to impale him to the point where the broomstick broke off and beat him up really badly. And anyway, I don't know how he did it, but by the grace of God or something, that he successfully escaped. And he ran 5 miles hiding in ditches along the road. And he was on his way to the grandparents' house because he didn't know where else to go, right? And so thank God they weren't home because they would just send him right back there. And so the neighbors recognized him. That's all I can remember. Like, I was never allowed to have friends, and my older brother wasn't allowed to have friends. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, he was in the sandbox with her. So whatever happened there, so they recognized him and they took over the situation. They took charge of the situation and he wasn't returned. But anyway, we didn't know what happened. Meanwhile, we didn't know for years if he was dead or alive. We didn't know anything that happened, and Dad would not tell us. So he was wide-eyed, like his eyes were glazed over, and he was terrified. And so he had us help him build like a secret room in case the authorities were going to come and get him. So we didn't know if he'd carry out his earlier threats to kill us. We didn't know if he would carry that out or not. So anyway, so that was a little bit more insight, unfortunately, to that situation. But
it just kept getting deeper and deeper.
And that's how it is. You know, you start out by looking at a magazine and you start entertaining things. You let stuff in through the eyes. You start entertaining it, and they go to the next, and the next, and the next, and that's just how sin is. Sin is hungry. It's hungry. It has to have more. And then you have to cover up one lie with the next lie and do this and that and the other. And before you know it, you know what I mean?
Right.
So before you know it, you're cut off completely and not even allowed to see extended family. You're cut off from everybody, and here you are living in the literal darkness, spiritual darkness and literal darkness. So, all right.
How did he treat your son? I'm sorry. How did he treat your brother who was autistic?
Unfortunately, he didn't have a whole lot of patience with any of us, especially him.
Yeah.
And we were all being used, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So if that wasn't already bad enough. But yeah, no, he would get hit a lot. Let's just say that. And I would try to protect him. But like I said, we're all a year and a half apart. It was not like, you know.
Yeah, I can't imagine because I have a son who has autism, and it's difficult, you know. People have to have patience.
Yes.
So
I did the best I could to shelter him. There were some points that I couldn't. It was not little. But I mean, I taught him how to read, and we would read the Bible together and things like that. I did the best I could with that type of stuff. But
you taught him how to read the Bible, right? You said?
Yeah, he didn't know how to read at all before then. I just had to take it really, really slow with him. And before you know it, he had the majority of the Bible memorized. I can just bring up something, a verse, and he'll be like, oh, yeah, that's found in such and such. And he'll just complete the sentence better than me. I can't do any of that. I can barely remember what I ate yesterday, let alone
memory. You planted the seed in him. You were a mom to him.
It was, yes, and it was something to do as well. We were just there for each other as much as we could be. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about that. It was just daily survival mode. But unfortunately, at a certain point, like I said, I don't remember after the guys left. I don't remember reading a whole lot. It was pretty
broken.
I was pretty broken. And then, so yeah, let me get into that real quickly.
Yes.
So when none of his attempts or his intentions actually materialized, unfortunately on my sweet 16th birthday, that should be my sweet 16th birthday, approached me and he proposed that we get married and said a lot of disgusting things that I won't repeat. And I was just like, but you're my father. That just came out, normally I wouldn't dare to say anything to him. I'd try not to speak to him, especially in that tone, but anyway. And I mean, the only thing that I can say is that I just really knew the fear of God came upon him because, he got up and left, and that's not normally. So I don't know if it was the fear of God that came over him or not, but I was spared. Honestly, I was spared from that, something that unfortunately other women are not spared.
Right.
So I don't know how to convey that, honestly.
God intervened that.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I don't know. Anyway, let's just, I got to move on from that. That's a little hard, because yeah, anyway, I got to move on from that. So okay. Anyway, yeah, that's a little, anyhow. So at that point, I was just like, I don't know how it could get any worse, right? So, okay, yeah. So the next point of that was, oh yeah. So from year to year, I would ask him about like once or twice a year, I would ask him and just whenever I caught him in a good mood and just feel out the situation, I would ask him when I would be allowed to go outside, get some sunlight, and he would be like, always like, oh, when you're 18, when you're 18. And so I was like, okay. The years would just blend together. So I don't know, I lost track after a while. But anyhow, 6 months after my 18th birthday, I asked him again. And it was a rare situation where my grandparents actually came over to the farm with a box of fruits and vegetables. It was a very rare occasion. They came and I was like, wow, I actually get to see them because I hadn't seen them in years. And so I asked him if I could go with them on a 2-week stay to their winter home and I could just stay with them for 2 weeks. And I would never dare ask him such a thing before, but I went for it because after all, he said I could go outside when I was 18. Here I'm 18 and a half. And just without even thinking, his knee-jerk reaction, which is what I expected, is his fist just went back to just pound me in the face. Just for some reason, I was just like, I didn't think about it, just came out of my mouth. And I was just like, what? Are you going to hit me again? Like, it just came out. Like the inner fire, I guess, that was hiding in there came out.
The rage that you felt probably surfaced.
It wasn't rage at that point. I don't know. I just went into defense mode and it just, the inner lioness that I didn't know I had in me came out. I don't know. So it just came out. He just was so shocked, and his fist was in midair and he was frozen. He was frozen right there in midair and and then he just blurted out. He was so mad. He just blurted out. I was like, well, you're never going to amount to anything. You're going to be a whore like your mother, and you're going to be back. You're going to come back to me. Yeah. And he allowed me to go. Like I said, it had to have been because how else that would have turned out. I don't know how else he would have allowed me. Anyway, so I was set free. And of course, I had no intention. So we went with them, and their winter home was 1,000 miles away. Not that distance would really matter much to him, but anyway, mentally it did something for me, So anyhow, as soon as I got there, I was just like, okay, I have an elementary school education, 18 and a half, and a 5th grade education. And so I was just like, okay, I was like scared, obviously, because I was entering into a world that I didn't know. And I felt like a blank slate and I was not socialized. just pretty much not. It's very awkward. And I would sweat profusely just being around other people. Anyway, I knew I had to get out of the situation. So I went and I bought a GED book. And I was like, I'm going to go through this book and learn it front to back. And then I'm going to sign up for the class and, get my, high school equivalency or whatever. And so that's what I did. It took me 2 months to go through that book. And because I didn't know anything about it, a lot of the stuff I should say I didn't know. And so I did the best I could there. And then I got my GED and I graduated with honors. And they were so impressed with me for whatever reason that they actually recommended me to the community college to get a full scholarship to become an RN. And they offered me a 4-year scholarship, but I was so messed up mentally. I took the prerequisites. I completed all the prerequisites. I took the National League for Nursing exam. I had to take it twice before I could pass. I had a high enough percentile, but I did pass. And like I said, I had that right on the table, a gift waiting for me. But I was so scared because I was at my grandparents' house. And I was so scared because I knew he was coming to get me. He was going to come get me. And you know what I mean? And so, and plus I was just I was mentally unstable and just everything else, as you can imagine, traumatized. And so, I don't know, something in me was like, I just can't do this. And I regretted it a lot for years, but then it ended up being a blessing that my life turned out different. So it all worked out. But anyhow, so I'm just going to try to hurry along here so it won't be a 50-hour video. So I opted just to go ahead and just jump right in to get a job. And so I got a job right away. And then I found a cheap, it was like a $250 a month trailer, an old trailer that was roach infested, but the best thing ever because it was mine.
It was yours.
I didn't own it, but it was, I was out of my own, right? And so, I didn't tell my grandparents where I was living. I guess I kind of skipped over that part earlier in the testimony.
You disconnected?
I didn't. I was going to church with him at first, but then I ended up disconnecting with him. Yeah, because I didn't want him to find me. And they didn't know where I was living. He was creative in how he could find out where you're living, but they weren't like that. I did kind of skip over the whole point earlier. When we were living on the road, he actually changed my name while we were living on the road in case we were pulled over. He thought maybe it would help if it would throw them off, if the 3 kids, were different names or whatever, you know what I mean? So he started calling me something. And so that's how I got changed. Later it became legalized by my grandparents. They honored whatever he called me, and that became my legal name. But anyway, it turned out to be anyway, it's just all crazy. So anyhow, so I got on my own. And I was separated, except for going to church with them for a while. I did go to church with them for a while because I was so lonely and looking for direction in my life. I was looking to be better grounded, and I just felt like I was, maybe that's not, I don't think that's the right thing, sorry. I just felt like I was wandering and didn't know where my place was and all of that. I remember the comfort that I felt as a child and then as a teen, and I was like, maybe that same comfort I'll get from the church. But I didn't find any comfort there, and of course nobody could relate to me because I was just different. I was too different. I was different. I didn't fit in anywhere, and everybody had their own lives and social lives, and there was a lot of people that just went there for social gathering. It wasn't the church there that I could detect anyway. But they had me baptized. They wanted me to be baptized, got to be holy, so they had me baptized. But that was pretty much the extent of it. I didn't know anything about relationship with God. They never talked about relationship with God. There was no such thing as being born again because born again people were crazy to them. Yeah. So,
really?
Yeah.
And
you got to watch out for them people.
There was nothing about deliverance or anything either.
I actually tried to go to counseling, and they treated me so bad in counseling that I felt even worse for the whole situation. So that was it for me. I would have been driven to end it. That's how bad they were at the counseling. So I was like, okay, they don't understand either. So there's nobody I can talk to. I was just alone, you know what I mean? So I was like, all right, so I'll just, I'll work hard and take care of myself. I can't pick up the phone to call anybody for help. That's okay. I'll just work, I'll figure it out. And I actually ended up starting to do really well on my own as far as professionally goes and stuff like that. I was doing pretty good, taking care of myself.
You occupied yourself. with other?
Yeah, I mean, I was working full time, and then after work, I was doing things on the side. Like I would take groceries to elderly people. I would buy their groceries and take them to their house. I would clean their house for extra money. Not the groceries part paying me, but just charging a little bit to clean the house and stuff like that and help them. I was just doing whatever I can. I mean, I was babysitting. I was doing all kinds of different things. Just to keep myself busy and just to make sure I had what I needed, because I knew I could never call them for help. Well, there was one time I did try to call them for help, and I needed to go to the dentist because, like I said, we didn't have any of that growing up. So I had cavities from growing up. And my grandmother, she did take me to the dentist. I'm having a brain fart over here. So anyhow, they do all that. They're like, yeah, this and this and this. She has cavities, and she called the dentist a liar and turned around and left, right? And I was like, wow, that's great. And so there came a point later on in life where I did call them, and just to see if I asked them again if they would help, just to see what they would help me. And they were like, what do you want? That's how they treated me at that point. Like, what do you want? So anyway, I don't want to go into a whole lot of that. Like I said, that's all been forgiven. But just to show I didn't really have support. So at that point I knew, okay, I can't call anybody for anything.
You experience now, you try to get help from the church, and then now the church failed you. They couldn't help you. So now you harbored something new, which is called church hurt.
Yes. Yeah.
And then now you went from being free. You said you created a life for yourself as quickly as you could, and then there came a time where you, like you said, you found no comfort in the church.
Mm-hmm.
So sadly, that the spiritual life that you had sparked in earlier years was not rekindled.
Yeah, exactly. That stage in my life.
You started feeling lost.
Yeah, I mean, I was hurt, lost, naive, learning. I had to learn everything the hard way. Did I go to church on occasion? Yes, because I was trying to get myself out of my shell, and it just turned out to be like a social thing. And I almost wish I didn't, because that's where I met somebody I shouldn't have met later in life. But anyway, I'll kind of back up a little bit. I prematurely, at the age of 20, I literally had just gotten out at 18 and a half. And here I am at 20 years old, and I got married. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I got married, but of course, that was doomed to fail, and it only lasted 2 years. And so he ended up getting involved with somebody else. Before we were even divorced, I started making myself available, and I started dating. He was still legally married, and he was living out of the state at that point and kicked out. And I kind of sat on it for a while, and not like I wanted to get back with him, but I was just focused on my own life, and I didn't rush with the divorce, and I was dating other people, and so I became just as adulterous, to be honest with you. I mean, it makes something, it opens the door for something it's not good. You need to close one door before you enter the other door, and so I had a hard way. Are you still there? Okay, so we're back. So yeah, the marriage ended after 2 years, unfortunately, and I'm not proud of it. I felt like that was the start of cyclic behavior, unhealthy behavior. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I felt like there was an entry.
It caused it caused a chain reaction.
I think so. Yeah, it didn't get really bad until years later, but yeah, it was definitely the wrong path. So yeah, there you go. So I think we are at the next part. The next segment was, so it was after a couple of years of being like established at my job and doing good in my own life, and I finally had a really nice apartment all by myself. I didn't need anything. That I was completely self-sufficient and doing really good as far as that goes. Well, I'm at work, and I'm walking out to my car, and I'm like, man, that guy looks so familiar. It was this old antique truck, and this man in there. I was like, that looks like my dad, just like an older version of him, right? Like I don't know, he must have really aged, accelerated or something. But anyway, I was like, oh, it looks like my dad, and then it hit me like, that is my dad. He was stalking me at my work.
Oh, he found you.
I told you, he's very resourceful. with finding people way back then. He would go and look at, I mean, it was weird. He would go look at public records. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so I kind of knew it was going to happen one day, but it just was like, I was hoping it wouldn't. Anyway, so yeah, he's out there sitting in that truck, and I'm like, oh, great. And he's clearly staying at my grandparents' house, and so I was like, all right. So I quickly get on the phone with the authorities up north, and I was like, is he supposed to be down here? And they're like, well, no, actually, he's not even allowed to leave the state because he has multiple warrants for his arrest. He heard voices, and the voice told him to go run into a cop car or something. It's just crazy. And so he had several warrants out for his arrest, and apparently the SWAT team had previously found him in that secret room in the farmhouse. I don't know what came of that. Anyway, if he got away or whatever, I don't know. But anyway, so anyhow, they're like, they sent somebody right away. The SWAT team went to my grandparents' winter home, and he was hiding in the back room. They got him, and anyway, long story short, he was given over 40 years in prison.
40.
Over 40 years. The stuff that he was trying to do to me, he was also in the same state, going after one of my step siblings. He was going after her as well at the same time as he was talking to me. And like, he just wouldn't stop. You know what I mean? And so we got to a point, I was like, when I got on my own, I was just leaving well enough alone. I was just like, I'm going to live and let live or whatever. Like, I just didn't want to deal with it. And plus, what did I know? You know what I mean? What did I know? I didn't know about different resources and this, that, and the other. And like, I didn't know about anything in life. And so
you didn't know how to
call the authorities, but that's it. Huh?
You didn't know how to reach out for help.
Yeah, I didn't know how to reach out to help. I didn't know who I could talk to about whatever. I didn't know how to deal with the situation, especially since I knew the whole family. They were really well known. They were very protective of him, and who am I against that? You know what I mean? They had unlimited resources, not me. So anyway, that was a couple-year process from him going from jail to prison. But anyway, it was all crazy because by the time he actually went to prison, right, it was like 3 months later that my mother, she took her own life, and she was just off living her own life and remarried and living a good life and everything like that. But she suffered from depression, really, really bad depression. And, I guess I got that from her. I don't know. I am my mother's daughter, right? So stuff passes along. Anyway, so it was crazy because I had a really nice conversation with her, and then 2 days later she was gone. And we had booked a vacation, like literally had it booked and everything. Yeah, we were going to go to Discovery Cove, but she just couldn't take it anymore, and she left work early, and her husband found her. Yeah, so that happened. It was just 3 months from when he went to prison, so it was just like everything was so. I grieved so much, I was crying so much. It didn't make any sense logically, but anyhow, I don't know. I was grieving. And then with her, it was different. I mean, yeah, I grieved, obviously, but I went down a lot of memory when she died. I lost a lot of memory. And then my life just went, it was like a snowball effect. And I was doing things that were not characteristic. Like I completely uprooted myself from my stable job and that I had for quite a bit of time at that point. And I was doing so good there. I was promoted into management and everything. I was doing really good, making really good money. And so I uprooted myself from my stable job. And I didn't even have a job lined up where I was going. I just uprooted and moved to a different city altogether. And I made the mistake moving in with my boyfriend that I had met at the church one of the churches that my grandparents had taken me to. And so I moved in with him, and I guess that's the level of Christianity there. But anyhow, that ended up being really, really bad. And like I said, I was in a daze. My head was foggy. I was working random jobs. Like I was not stable at all. And so he ended up being he was like a partier. So he would go to church and be one person. Like when I got into the relationship, I didn't know he was like. And so that's how it initially was. Obviously, I knew we shouldn't be living together, but I mean, like I said, I wasn't like a reborn Christian or anything like that. So this. I was just doing whatever. But I thought he came from a really strong Christian family, and I thought he was, different. But he was going to parties, and it was either I was being left at home by myself and he was going to go, or I was going to go with him. So I started going to parties with him, and before you know it, he was taking me to strip clubs with all his friends, and all of us were going, strip clubs. And then before you know it, he was like, "Here, try this, try some ecstasy, here's some pot, And so before you know it, I was trying stuff that I should have never tried. Just stuff you shouldn't do because it's like a gateway. Even if you don't become addicted, you still invited something in. You know what I mean? You still invite something in. And so, yeah, and before you know it, it was like, I don't know, I'm just going to say, it was like a drugged up episode, and I still remember. And several months went by. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 months. I literally cannot remember because it was all in that time, which was back in the year 2000, by the way. I should have said that. October of 2000, that's when my mom. So anyhow, it was all within that time, within a few months. So here I am, several months pregnant, and he's hiding it from his family. And he's like, you have to get this taken care of. So he said it would be the worst thing that ever happened to him. He's like, having a baby would be the worst thing that ever happened. I was like, wow. And I objected. I went back and forth for a while on that, and I did object to that, but I didn't object enough. And so he drove me to the clinic, and he sat there and waited while it was done. He was like, stand right here until it's done. And he made me pay for it too, by the way. So
he made you do the procedure. He took you to the.
Certainly pushed me in that direction. And like I said, where there's a will, there's a way. And yes, I'm not doing that. And I could have just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could have stood my ground. So I take full responsibility for that. It's totally my fault. But so anyhow, so that happened, and it was one of the loneliest and emptiest relationships I ever had. It got really bad to the point where he would go. Well, he was just seeing other people. So anyhow, I ended that nonsense and moved on with my life. But it was really hard. It was hard. It was so strange when I was in the clinic because they took me into the room where it was going to happen, and the table was in the center of the room. What is it doing in the center of the room? It was like an altar, and I was on there, and all of a sudden, now I felt dead at this point, right? I felt like just whatever, at this point. And I was still pretty much in a daze with everything with my mom. So I wasn't feeling a whole lot except like, okay, whatever at this point. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I start shaking uncontrollably and crying. And my teeth were chattering like crazy. Like, it was insane. And I'm like, what just came over me? It's like one of those things where, like, did something just enter me? Like, it just didn't seem normal. Like, I was literally thinking, like, what just happened? And why am I crying and shaking so bad? And they quickly injected me with something, and I was out. Like, they were just like, oh no, we're making sure this happens. I don't know, whatever. But I don't want to conclude there, draw conclusions there. But anyway, they quickly put me out, and that happened. But anyway, I look back, and now I can see that I grew to that by doing that. So anyway, so my life was spiraling downward, making wrong decision after another, living in the world, honestly, because something in me just knew that I wasn't living right, even though I wasn't not a Christian. I wasn't living right. So moving on. So the next days, if that wasn't bad enough, the next days, I end up going out on a few dates. I end up getting involved with this married, and wow, talk about sinking and talk about being a moral failure, So anyhow, that ended thankfully because his wife was calling me, and she was like, I wanted a chance to repair my marriage with my husband. It's been on the rocks for a while, but anyway, I wanted a chance to repair my marriage with my husband. I felt horrible.
She reached out to you?
He did. He felt guilty, and so he talked to her. And so she was calling me at my job. She was calling me at home. And I just was like, I'm done. I'm good. Like, I felt horrible about the situation. Right? And the very same day that he felt guilty and told her, he also showed up at my doorstep. And so I guess he was wavering between whatever he was doing. I don't know. And he was so angry at me because I wouldn't let him in. I was like, no, go back to your, I'm not doing this. So I wouldn't let him in. He got so mad. But anyway, but the reason I'm telling this is because that day it was a turning point, whatever, a major turning point. I'm in my bedroom and the window's open because it was cooler out. It was open just a little bit, but something came in and I'm like, is this really happening? And it was something very tentacle-like, very long tentacles, like you would see a jellyfish have, long tentacles like that, but without the jellyfish body. I don't know. It was something that was hovering about 3 feet off of the ground. It was 6 feet, about 6 feet in length, something like that. It was pretty long. And it was hovering midair and it was just gliding like it was going through water. And it just went whoop, right past me. And I literally was like 2 or 3 feet away from me, like right past me. And I was like, what is this? Like I did not know at this point in my life. I didn't really know much about the demonic or anything like that.
Demonic entities.
Yeah, I didn't know. I just was like, wow, this is crazy. I'm like, this is some, I don't know what you call it, Wi-Fi stuff. So the atmosphere changed. The atmosphere changed and all my emotions were heightened and I freaked out. And it was just very strange. And like whatever emotional stuff I was going through before, like I felt like I was losing my mind. Something changed that night and I started having sleep paralysis after that. So I clearly let something in, but I had to look back on my life to recognize that that's where that came in. You know what I mean? You keep living a certain way, then, you know, you're going to go through some stuff. So that happened. From that point on, it just seemed like, I hit a new level and I was just going in circles. I mean, you know, you think you're choosing a different person that's completely different than the last person you chose. You know what I mean? And that you are, okay, it's going to be fine this time. This person is completely different than the last one, right? But it kept being cyclic, with bad relationships and stuff like that. And, some friends of mine, they, introduced me to one of their best friends. They linked us up and it progressed to the point where he put the moves on me. And I was like, okay, you know, I liked the guy, whatever, but he did not tell me until after the fact that he was married. And yes, they were separated and she had moved on with her life and all that. It was kind of like the situation reversed that I was in my marriage, you know, back when I was 20 or whatever. Except he was the one who was still married. So there was still that covenant relationship that he hadn't ended yet. But he didn't tell me till after he had put the moves on me. I'm not in this, like, this is not happening. And so I thought about it and I was like, well, you know, she's already with somebody else and she's getting married and she's already moved on and it's been 2 years that they've been separated legally and stuff like that. Legally separated but not divorced. So I thought about it. I was like, well, let me just go talk to him. So I go to talk to him and literally out of nowhere, I start, like, I'm just talking to you like right now and all of a sudden it's like I'm a different person, right? And I was crying uncontrollably, like out of nowhere. It was like something came in me and was crying through me, like the Holy Spirit through me or something. I didn't know that till after the fact, but so I was grieving the Holy Spirit and he was trying to lead me away from that person. You know what I mean? He didn't want me going in that direction. And so I did have enough sense to walk away from that situation. Even though I didn't completely recognize what that was, I did walk away from that situation. But anyhow, I look back on my life and I'm seeing little areas, you know, points in my life where the Holy Spirit was trying to guide me. And then that happened again. I ran into my ex that had gotten me pregnant and we bumped into one another. I was out at the house or whatever. And we bumped into one another and he was talking to me and trying to get fresh with me and all this stuff. The same thing happened. I'm just sitting here talking, right? And all of a sudden
it just took over.
It took over. And he's like, okay, he's probably thinking this girl's nuts. I was thinking I was nuts. And so, like I said, it took me a while for me to look back on the situation, but it worked somehow because I was just like, I told him, I was like, I'm not going back down this road again with you, you know, but it's just interesting, you know, more and more, it was like the Holy Spirit was showing up like, no, not this direction. You know what I mean?
He was trying to guide you.
Yes, yeah. So what's the next question? So at this point, I was just so frustrated because no matter what I was doing, nothing was working for me and I just really had it. And it got to the point where it was interfering with my work because I would have bouts of bad depression, you know what I mean? And sleep paralysis and just not being happy and just like, what is going on? You know, what am I doing wrong? And so, I mean, it was even affecting my school. I went back to college, you know, to finally get an education and a career that you met me in. But it was affecting me to the point where I would drop classes, which is stupid because I was just becoming very unstable, you know, like it was bad. It's not who you see sitting, not the person you know. You know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
So anyhow, I reached a really, really low point and I was done. And I literally took all my beautiful clothes, not everything, but most everything, with the exception of a couple things. But I took the belongings and the majority of my clothes and I threw everything away. I took these garbage bags and I set them beside the dumpster because I figured somebody else could use the clothes. They're beautiful. Anyway, yeah, I was planning to end everything. It was a dark time. And so I don't know, I just started praying and I was desperately reaching out to God and I was just like, basically, you need to help me. Nothing I'm doing is working. My way, no matter what I do, like nothing is working. Nothing I'm doing my way is working. I'm willing to do things your way. And I was just like, you choose for me. I was just like, I had enough. I can't deal with this anymore. And so that great sense of peace that I felt back on the farm, that great sense of peace, this calmness and peace and comfort that came over me instantly when I cried out to him. So from there, that was like a positive turning. So yeah.
The sequence I noticed is you were trying to fill up your empty spaces,
with
the emptiness with relationships.
Yes. Because I didn't
And
really.
then you started spiraling because it was just causing a bad effect every time, just the worst effect.
Sin is progressive, and then your conscience starts to get seared. You know what I mean? You start searing your conscience. You let stuff in. That's, I don't know. You don't realize that you let that in. Anyway, it's just one thing after another. So much trauma built on not a good foundation. Let's just say that. And my own actions were horrendous. Yeah, so that was.
And you mentioned conscience. We have what's called I was just having this conversation with my husband today about how we have a subconscious and a conscience. In the subconscious, our mind is like a computer. It records everything.
Yes.
And then before you know it, that's how in the subconscious, it's just something that automatically starts to take control without you have no control because it's all in your subconscious. It's controlling you.
And that's actually, yeah, when I look back, that's what it feels like. It's just manipulating and controlling. I mean, it was not, I would say, okay, I'll take that back. It wasn't like it was controlling me, but it was pushing me in the direction. I was not grounded.
Yeah.
So,
you were acting out from memories.
Huh?
You were reacting from the memories that still was engraved without you.
The insomnia at night, the constant replay, and it's like you're like, where is that button to shut that off? Right? I was just so sick of it and over all of that. So my life was going in a better direction, but of course I still had depression and I still had, like, it would be bad. I would be putting the blackout curtains up and I could just stay in there for days and days and days. And of course, everything was on constant replay. And now I think maybe they were just replaying that in my head for me. I don't know how that works, but yeah, the spirit of,
that was the stronghold.
I had a lot of strongholds. There's a lot of strongholds there, unfortunately. And I'm not trying to laugh about it.
Yeah. And the Holy Spirit was still there trying to guide you, even though, but when there's a stronghold, it just pulls you right back. Like you'll try to go a couple steps forward, end up going 7, step backs.
Yeah. Well, it really was a good positive turning point when I was like, okay, that's it. You choose one, you take over.
You surrendered that
to a certain point, not fully, of course, but there's been small phases in my walk to get where I'm here. Okay, so God has been so patient with me. God has been so patient with me and the Holy Spirit. And it's been one step at a time with me. And he's just patiently waiting for me to let go of that room and let go of that room. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you can have this room, but you can't have all those rooms over there, So it's very loving and patient. That's just the God that we serve. He's not a God that's up there angry and just waiting to slam the hammer on you. It's not like that at all.
No.
He's been so incredibly patient and so loving and loved me and all that nonsense that I was doing. He didn't cast me away. Didn't cast me away. Loved me more than ever. Gently led me in the right direction. And yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So my life changed, right? And, fast forward, God ended up opening the doors. He opened the doors, and I met my husband, and there was something really different about him, very different. And
so you ended up going back to the church?
Yeah, decades. And nope.
Decades.
I was like, I'm done with that mess. But still, I was drawn to him because I never seen God in it at that point, up to that point. I never seen up to him. I'd never really seen God in anybody. So I did in him. I saw that he's so different. He asked me if it was okay if we just do an old fashioned type courtship and just wait till we're married. So there wasn't any of the distractions that I was really accustomed to. And so we truly got to know one another over the course of one another. It was great. But yeah, there was something different about him. Even though I wasn't fully submitted to God, or something. So everything was going really good there. I just was like, okay, this is who I am. I fully embraced it, and I was so relieved, and I felt so safe with that, that he would value me that much and want to start the relationship on being blessed. And that's what he said. So I was like, wow, that's amazing. So yeah. So the next thing we're going to flow into, I guess, is years go by, of course. But eventually my identity as like being a Christian, like looking back, I know I wasn't Christian, right? But I would consider myself Christian, but I didn't know what that was. Like if you're born into a family who goes to church, you're a Christian. That's what I thought a Christian was. You know what I mean? Just because you're born into it, and that's what and it was just lip service. If I ever said anything good about God, up to a certain point in my life, obviously, then, obviously, but up to a certain point in my life, I just gave God lip service. But I thought I was a Christian. But anyhow, so eventually in 2012, that came into question. I had a really low point in my life, and I was just absolutely fed up with the insomnia. I was just so tired, and it just interferes with your life. Any little thing, because I'm like hyper aware of my surroundings, even in my sleep. I'm napped, like I'm being obviously whatever, but like anything would wake me up. And I reached a low point in my life, and I just cried out desperately. I wasn't yelling at God, but I was almost yelling at him. It was like that. I was just like, oh, I was like, what is going on? I was like, I am sick and tired of the depression that I'm going through. I'm sick and tired of crying. I'm sick and tired of reliving it. My brain won't shut off. I can't sleep. I was just like, what am I doing wrong? And remember, I had been baptized back when I was a teen. I accepted him as my savior. I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was a Christian back then. So I was like, you say in your book, that's what I told him. I was like, you say in your word that when we accept you as our savior, that you take our burdens, and your burdens are light, and we have peace. And I'm like, why don't I have peace then? I was like, almost like no. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? And I was like, show me. I was like, tell me what I'm doing wrong. But it was just a whole lot more, I was like almost yelling at him. And I was pretty desperate. And so it's okay to be like that with him, because he understands. He understands, and he doesn't hold his own. It wasn't even a week later, a guy showed up at our job. Well, going way back, he had come to the shop, and we had fixed, whatever, computer or whatever. But he didn't know me, you know what I mean, like the history. At that point, he didn't know anything about that. He was just a customer. But anyhow, so he shows up, and he's like, yeah, God sent me here. Like, he gave me a message to deliver. And I was just like in shock. I mean, yeah, I know I prayed about it, but you don't really expect somebody to show up. What's going on? And he's like, it's time. And then he went, okay, what does that mean? It's time to close the door. Because again, I don't know, didn't know a whole lot about that kind of stuff, right? So I pondered on that for a minute, and a minute being a week, because he showed up about a week later, and he's like, well, I don't want to know your business. I don't want to be in your business. He's like, but I am obligated to deliver the full message to you that God sent me here for. He says, but we have to pray so the rest of the message comes through. And at that point, it was the end of the day, and everybody had left work. And, I hadn't, obviously, we were getting ready to leave at that point, but anyhow, so it was just my husband and I, and that guy, his name is Chris. So we stood all three together, and he started praying, and before you know it, he was praying in tongues, which is the first time I'd seen anybody pray in tongues in person. Never seen that before. And so he was going back and forth between tongues and English. And then as he was praying, the message was coming, and the very first thing was, I know I know that you grew up in who guys. And by that time, so I was just bawling. I was just like, it was just, I don't know, it was just wow, amazing. And so he started telling me my life, and as if that wasn't enough, right? So he started telling me my life, and even mentions a near-death car accident that he said I was actually supposed to die, but that, he said I was supposed to die, but that he saved my life, something to that effect. But anyhow, he was telling me all this stuff, and there was some prophecy over my life. And he told me that he had been trying to get my attention for some time, but me being a rebellious, stubborn, that I was very, oh my goodness, I was very hard-headed, and you're not telling me nothing I'm gonna do. Like I said, the person you know now is not, you wouldn't know that person if you know. So anyway, he's like, I've been trying to get through to you for get your attention for a while. And I've been trying to draw you under myself because your family was no good for you. So apparently he was trying to draw me to himself for a very long time. I just wish I had continued that relationship as a child, because I know he was trying to. But anyway, so that's what he told me. He's like, your family was no good for you. And what else did he tell me? There was one thing he did command me to do. He said, you go home tonight and you forgive those who hurt. And I wasn't thinking, it just out of my mouth. And I was like, but I don't know how. Like I'm crying, right? And I was like, but I don't know how. It just came out like I'm talking to God like that. I don't know how to forgive them, because I thought I had forgiven them a couple of different times, but not, you know what I mean? So anyhow, God told me that my heart was right, that I had the right heart in the situation, and that he was removing the spirit of unforgiveness that causes unrest. It causes torment. It causes a mind that goes in circles and won't stop. It just keeps hitting the replay button. You know what I mean? Because yes, the spirit of unforgiveness is a very heavy one. It's a very heavy one. It tries to end it. So anyway, that was very clear. So he told me some other things, prophecy that was going to happen and things like that. I don't think I'm going to go into all that, but I will say that I went home that night, and that was the first night ever that I slept like a baby.
Wow.
No insomnia.
That's awesome.
No insomnia, and that debilitating depression that I had was gone.
Oh.
Yeah, it was all gone. So he was gracious enough, even though I hadn't even gone home and forgiven them at that point in time. He was like, I'm removing it. So I go home. Yes, I went home and I actually prayed. I forgave him, and I actually prayed for them, not to forgive them. And not to.
You prayed for them?
Yes, I prayed for everybody who hurt me, and I went home and I did what he said, because he wasn't an option to do next week. He said, you go home. And so, that's what I did. And I prayed for them. I prayed for their salvation, and I prayed for God to forgive them and not hold it against them. So anyhow, so that was amazing. As amazing as that was, and as mind-blowing as that was, I still didn't fully submit, or I don't even like to use that word. I know that that's the reality of it, but to somebody who's rebellious and wants to always be in control, that's what I wanted. Ever since I was free, I had to have control. You know what I mean? Because I was never allowed to have control before. So I always had to be in control of everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah,
you're had control before my dad, but now so I wanted control, and so it translated in that way with the Heavenly Father as well. I still wanted to have that control of, okay, I gave you another room, but I don't want you to have that room over there. You know what I mean? So I still didn't. Go ahead.
I was looking at the book that you read, Deliverance, the Children's Bread, and it talks about how that when you don't have the control, like when you want to have control, it's because you still need deliverance in those areas. Like you said, you had rooms that you were not letting God touch those rooms.
I wasn't letting, I'm sorry, touch those rooms, and I didn't,
Yeah.
even though that was amazing what happened, I still didn't, I didn't, even though I was married to somebody that was godly and who actually had a relationship with God, you know what I mean? I didn't. And so I didn't have that relationship or trust or any of that. I still didn't have that full trust in him. And I was scared of giving him control. I don't like the unknown. I lived my whole life in the unknown, and I like to be in control. So, yeah, that's pretty much the truth of the matter.
It was hard.
Huh?
It was hard to not, because you didn't want to feel that vulnerability again.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Like, what's he gonna? Well, like I said, it is a trust issue. I didn't have a relationship with him. Yeah, I would pray and stuff like that, but I still didn't have I wasn't doing daily prayers, and I wasn't doing Bible study. Like, this year is the first year that I'm really getting back into the Bible in many, many years.
Wow.
Yeah, there's stuff in there that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was in there. Like, wow, okay. So, all right. So I hadn't fully submitted. Giving up control, like I said, it just terrified me. It really terrified me. And like I said, it's been a long process of realizing that I have a father that I can trust and that loves me. I've just been such a thick-headed person. He's been so patient with me. And I no matter who you think God is, he's unlike anyone you've ever met.
Amen.
He just loves us. There's no way to describe how much he loves us. And he's such a good father. And I told myself I wasn't going to cry, so let's not go down that road. But
he loves us so unconditionally.
Yeah, you hear it, but and it didn't resonate with me for. I don't know if that's the right word. It took a while to pierce through my shell. It took a while. Where was I at with that? So, oh yeah. So I was saying that, oh yeah, so I hadn't fully submitted, right? But all of that obviously did make some impact, but I'm still like leery about giving full control. I haven't gotten to that point yet. But anyway, so from time to time, it was just the weirdest thing. People would show up. They would just walk into my job, and they would start talking to me and ask me if they could pray over me. Yeah, like literally just walk in and ask to pray for me. And it was like, that's kind of weird. Okay, I'll go. That's fine. I'll do that. But yeah, it just kept happening. It kept happening. God was trying to draw me, of course, and I was headed in the right direction. I was doing regular fasting, and I was trying, right, and I had broke off a really bad drinking habit. I call it a habit. It was an addiction. It was such an addiction. It was like, that's what I leaned on. And I was filled with that instead of the Holy Spirit. I was filled with that. And every day, I would make drinks and all that. And I'd add even more. I just keep on adding to it. Yeah. And I could just sit there and just go into a blaze. And every day I'd go to, yeah. Wow. It was a very long addiction. I should have mentioned that earlier. So I had, with God's help, I was able to actually, like I said, he's been so gracious to me. He actually helped me kick that. Like I said, it's just been step by step by step, and it's just been so patient, just waiting for me. So it was a one.
In deliverance, the deliverance that
yeah, there was a word given years ago, back in the section where I was talking about my Christianity came into question. There was a word that always stuck in the back of my head that God had given my husband for me, and he said that I was going to have a reborn experience. And so she's going to have that experience, and she needs to make an appointment with me. Come expecting, like go expecting, and I will meet her behind the hinged door. In the world does that mean, right? Like, what do I do there?
I've never heard that.
Yeah, I was gonna meet me behind the hinged door, and I'm like, okay. I was like, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? So that always stuck with me in the back of my mind. I was like, okay, so he's telling me that I need to be born. So anyhow, I came to terms that I was a complacent, lukewarm Christian at best, I guess. Yeah. So years later, like I said, baby steps, whatever. Years later, called us out onto the water. He told my husband to do the business. He said, you're married to the business. And he was calling us out onto the water, and he wanted us to just leave everything behind and go to a different country. He told us what country. And I was like, not having that. I fought that. I loved my life, and I was, like I was telling you before, I had a lot of things going on that I needed to be delivered from, and one of them was called lust of the eyes, which is material. And I had a wardrobe like you've never seen. Yeah, I had a ton of clothes and things, and my house was beautiful, and I had all this stuff.
Wow.
And just leave everything. And my job, I loved my job, and I was cush and comfortable there, and it had been established for decades, and I just was like, I'm not doing this. And I fought it. But God was gracious again, and he let me sit on it for a whole year. He let me sit on that for a whole year, and then I came into a point of agreement. So he waited for my own instead of like, no, you're leaving now. He let me come on my own, and I was like, okay, let's do this. And so that was interesting.
Yes.
I just gave most everything away, and I sent all my clothes to a mission in Haiti, and gave my car away to a really good pastor that I know. He wasn't a pastor of a church I went to, but church always had a way of finding itself. Like church always came to me. Wherever I worked, church always found me somehow. People were coming to my hunting me down. Like I told you, it was the craziest thing. And so I fixed a lot of his computers and stuff like that, and he became a really good. Anyway, yeah. So I don't want to go down a different direction, but I gave all the.
What year was that?
So I gave him all of that. What do you mean? What year was that? When I gave him everything? Okay, yeah, it was November of this past year.
That's when you.
It was like October. Well, technically, I guess it was October, because in the beginning of November we this country sold the house. The house sold in 1 week. And
Wow.
as God said, he was going to make it a fast sale. And so anyway, I gave him my car, and I gave him the clothes, and we handed the business off to somebody. We took some time there trying to find the right person, and God named the person. He named that person who was going to take over the business.
He gave you the name?
Named the person we knew for years, but he named that person and his family. So it's still a family-run business. I won't go into all that, but it's still a family-run business. Yeah, it's in good hands. So anyhow, here we are. And he's like, just go and just lean on me, lean on me, and I will guide you step by step. And so we are at a place renting. We don't know where we're going next. It's walking out on the water. And I will interject something that hopefully my husband does not mind. But I wanted to, before we moved here, when we were in the process, I was getting the shop cleaned up and ready, and for the takeover or whatever. And I was cleaning the house and getting rid of the stuff. And it was very overwhelming at that stage. And my husband had an accident, and like to be out of commission for at least 6 to 8 weeks, like really bad. At least, you know what I mean? So he was like, what am I going to do? Because Sonny can't do everything, all this on her own. And he was praying about it, and I was praying about it. And God told him, he's like, well, if I called you out onto the water, will I not empower you? And so he told him, get up and walk. And keep in mind, he had been wheeling himself around the house on one of those office chairs on wheels. He had been wheeling himself around the house because he was in excruciating pain. He couldn't walk, right? God told him, I called you out onto the water, and if I called you, will I not enable you? Get up and walk. He got up and walked. I have the pictures of before the prayer and like during, I have the side-by-side pictures of his foot. Huge. And the swelling went right down right there. The swelling of his foot went down during the prayer and all that, and he was walking just fine, and he was running to client sites, all that. Crazy. Yeah,
I'm glad you're sharing that, because it just shows that when God has destined you to go somewhere, the enemy is going to always try to bring a delay.
Yeah,
and I can relate. Yeah,
no, that wasn't going to happen. So that was crazy. I mean, that's not the first miracle that I've seen. I see a lot of miracles.
That's powerful.
It's pretty amazing. I see a lot of miracles with him. It's really amazing. So I was like, okay, we're doing this. And so here we are. Fast forward to April of this year. I took since like November, March, right? I just did full recoup mode because I had been working, oh my goodness, I don't know, maybe helping him with the business at least 17 years of the several decades that he's had the food. But anyway, I was working like a dog and I recouped, and here I am, like, okay, he called us out on the water, and I'm not even like, I don't even have a relationship with God, and he called us out on the water. I better get with it, right? Like, and I just felt, for a while, I felt so convicted before we even moved here. I just had this burden, this conviction that I need to get my life. I need to fully give my life to God. And, and so by the time April rolled around, up to that point, we were watching a lot of testimonies online and like NDE, near-death experiences and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if people realize it, but there's been an explosion on YouTube with near-death experiences and testimonies coming out. Like, it's that time that we're in, but all of a sudden, thousands are just, it's like an explosion of all these testimonies all coming out at this time. So we were just, at that point, I had seen at least 50. I think it was around 100, but now it's several hundred that I've seen. But it was like around 50 or so that I've seen. And there was this one that I've seen that I don't know what about it was, but something told me, get his book. I heard his testimony, but he didn't really go into a whole lot of detail, obviously, but it was enough there that something touched me. And it was like, and I'm not a book buyer. I have that one and the Deliverance, the children's bread, that's it. You know what I mean? Well, the online books, but anyway, I don't buy books. I don't read books, just not since the farm or whatever. So anyhow, it was absolutely life-changing. That book is absolutely inspired. And his experience, it really, it cut the shell, it broke the shell right open. And I was like, all in, I'm yours, I'm all in. And so I read that book, and it was like 5 to 7 days later that I set the alarm, and I was like, okay, I got to get up early enough, you know what I mean, before he gets up so I can have quiet time. And I would set the alarm for like 5 hours before he would get up. That way, worst case scenario, if he wakes up early, I still have a good 2 or 3 hours that I could read the word. And I was averaging on a lot of days 3 to 4 hours a day of Bible, studying the Bible, doing praise, learning how to do praise, because I didn't like really do praise, and just really pressing in, trying to know him and his word. And that totally changed that testimony. The guy's name on YouTube is Randy K. And his book is called Heaven Stormed. Let me tell you, it stormed my life, and it totally changed my prayer life. And I don't know, I think that testimony, God pushed him through that testimony just for me. So it totally changed everything. And before I knew it, I mean, a couple of weeks went by, maybe 3, 4 weeks, but I have it all documented. I started getting words from God and stuff like that, and having encounters and things started happening, and like, whoa, and because like when I get up, I like to tell God, good morning, Father, I start talking to him, and one day it's like, I get the good morning back, and just other things happen like that. It's just like, wow, mind blowing.
You audibly heard?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I know his voice. So I was just like, and then that same voice again when he was telling me he loves me, and the emotion that came and just coming to me in the in-between, when you're starting to fall asleep or you're starting to wake up, the in-between, he likes to come to me. And it's so weird because it's like it's breaking through a different dimension. Sound, yes, I've had like a really quick vision as well, but mostly it's the in-between. But he comes to me in like 3 different ways. He comes to me, and it's like, this is just the beginning. So it's like, wow, I'm so blown away by it. I was like, wow, I've been missing out on this my whole life. And to think that I was so leery about getting close and letting him in. So I was like, okay, that's that. So there would be days where, I'd only have 2 hours of studying. Other days would be 6 to 8 hours of studying. But I was averaging like 3 or so. But just really pressing in as much as I can. It's totally worth it, making the time. And I'm not a morning person. I absolutely hate mornings. I hate mornings so much. But I was like, I'm going to make room. And that's how much that testimony impacted my life. And so I was like, okay, I'm all in. I'm all good.
You became an early bird.
Well, I'm still not an early bird, but let me tell you, and there's been times I'm in there praying and I'm on the floor because I like to be fully prostrate or whatever. I like that the best. I have a bad knee because of the bad accident. My kneecap just apparently that happened twice this week already. But so I'm on the floor and I'm praying and I started passing out. That happened a couple times where I almost pass out, but then I get up and then I'm like, okay, let me just start singing praises. And in the morning before he's awake, I'll just throw the earbuds in and I'll voice it out like silently, but with my whole heart, you know what I mean? And then when he wakes up, then I take time to go in there into, my prayer closet and I will just belt it out and just start singing out loud every chance that I get. Every chance. Like he takes a shower, I jump in there and I do praise. Like it just, it changes you. All of this changes you to start really pressing into him, and you start building a relationship. He's there waiting. But the thing is, think of any other kind of relationship. You want to know that the other person really wants to be there, be around you and talk to you. And so he's a gentleman. He waits for you.
He waits.
He waits for you. He's a complete gentleman. He's not pushing himself on you at all. And so, yeah, you start pursuing him, you get blessings, apparently. All kinds of wild stuff. I have pages and pages of stuff already, and it's only been since April.
You wrote all those pages?
I've been documenting every word, every encounter, all the words he's been giving me, the vision, the dreams, all that stuff. I mean, I've been documenting everything. I have pages and pages. I put the date, the time, all of that. So
you can include that in your book?
Yeah.
When you write it?
Yeah, absolutely. The latest encounter was just this past week. Anyhow, it's been really exciting and it's completely changed my life. Like I said, I wish you could go back to meet the old Sunny because then you would be like, whoa. Not the in-between one when I married my husband, but lost and so sad. Yeah, but hey, you're calling in a command, right?
Your name is now what the enemy tried to use for evil, God turned it for the good.
Yes. Yes.
Which is we go back to that. What was that meaning? Originally, your name meant something else.
Yes.
And then God changed it.
Yeah, he literally.
Yes.
Or I worked through him to change it or whatever. Like he works things together for good. However it came.
Yeah. And then what happened after the very last part of what you wrote on your testimony is that you read another book that has to do with deliverance, or you started.
Right. Oh, right. I still had stuff to deal with, obviously, and I was not trying to waste any time because, like I said, I was I'm all yours. I love it. Like I was just like, I don't know. So I was just like, okay, what do I need to do? I was like, okay, I've been through so much stuff, and yeah, I did a self deliverance. I did one, well, I did the book first and then I did one on YouTube with this couple that's what they do. They have a legit ministry. They do deliverances. I did an online one as well one day live and I was like, woohoo, I'm signed up for that. But I first did the book and I took a full day, locked myself out pretty much. And I was in there the entire day. And I had I wrote down, I went through the whole book obviously first, but I wrote down all these different traumas, all these different things, all the people I needed to really forgive. And then I wrote down all the people that I could think of, obviously. There's probably many that there's many that I haven't, but I wrote down every instance that I could remember of times that I've hurt other people. So I'm forgiving those people for hurting me and then praying for the people and forgiving myself, I guess you could say, and just admitting and confessing to him, cleanse me from this. These are all the people that I went back 30 years, you know what I mean? Back to, it's been 30 years since I've been late, somewhere around there. I'm 51 this year. So I went back a long time and I was all these people that, and then I realized when I'm looking at the list, I'm like, wow, like my list is actually longer than what these people did to me. You know what I mean? And it makes you look at yourself and like, wow, I'm a sinner and I need help. You know what I mean? And so I started realizing like, wow, like I am just as bad as everything else, in my own ways. The people, just anything I could think of. It didn't matter what it was. I was like, even if it's small, I'm like, okay, let me just get it out, confess it, repent, pray for forgiveness, and and even pray like for a blessing for those people and hope that they found. So yeah, there was a whole lot of that. It took a whole day, but there was some strongholds that really, really needed to be broken off because during my youth, obviously, the lust of the flesh, when all of that happened, it gets transferred over.
It is transferred. Yeah.
So I had the lust of the flesh to deal with, and boy, I need to tell you, I mean, I'm talking like incubus. And so I had that to deal with. I had a lot of anger and rage still. I know it's hard to imagine, but I had anger and I had, oh man, word cursing. I could, like, back when I was cursing out, I was just filthy. And like I said, but
you struggled with that up to
I remember telling you about it back in 2020. I was like, I'm afraid to go to church because I'm afraid something's going to fly out of my, because it was such a habit. And I didn't realize, and I learned later on with all these different testimonies and things like that, I realized that depending on the words you, because obviously there's life and death, all that, but there's all these, demonic spirits, they have a name, like the F one, that's actually a spirit. You're invoking him when you say that word. You're invoking him and inviting him into your life. And I did not realize that. But anyhow, so yeah, I was like, no, I'm not dealing with that. So anyhow, I was like just in my bathroom, like locking myself in again. And like, I need help with this stuff. And I'm desperately crying, like I'm for real. I need to be delivered from this, all this stuff. And I made the motion of like literally putting something on the floor in front of me, like with my hands, like I'm putting this on the altar. I'm putting this on the altar. I can't, I've tried to quit. I can't quit. You know what I mean? Like masturbation, things like that. Like I can't quit. I need help with word cursing. I need help with anger. It's just, I don't want to be separated from you. I told him, I was like, I can't deal with being separated from you. I need you in my life. And boom, from that moment on, that day on, boom, that was it.
Never again.
That was it. He broke that. I couldn't tell you how many times, but yeah, he broke it all off. So it's real. He does break it off. Truly want it. When you're ready, he's there waiting. Break it off.
What did you feel when you were doing that action?
Well, like I said, I was literally crying, just begging him to take it from me. I was like, I'm over it. I don't want to be separated from you. I need to, I mean, yeah, I felt relief, of course. I felt relief after that. And I was like, I have full confidence. I'm standing on your promises, God. You know, I'm standing on your promises. And you are the rock of my salvation. And I'm just going on and on. But that was that. And I got up and I'm like, okay, that's dealt with, and sure enough, no more.
And that reminds me.
No more nonsense.
That reminds me of a scripture that says, when you humble yourself under the hand of God, resist the devil and he will flee.
Yeah.
That's what the word says. And that's what exactly happened to you. The devil fled from you.
Yeah.
You were struggling for such a long time, but you humbled yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what, and the word is it never will turn away. Like it'll do what it says it will do. So when you humble yourself, resist the devil and he will flee. That's what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let me tell you, I did want to kind of go back and talk about the time in the word and really getting into everything. Once you get into that word and you're serious, just expect some pushback. Expect it, because now he's losing his grip on you. And boy, did I get that. If you're hit with drowsiness when you're reading the scripture, and also spirit of heaviness, I literally felt weighted down walking, like there was something sitting on my shoulders. I really felt like, yes. And I told my husband, I was like, there were some points where I had to tell him, I'm like, could you pray for me? Because there's something not right. I'm either going crazy or, there's something not right, because I'm trying to read and my eyes, it was like I don't want to say they were vibrating, but they were almost vibrating and pressing shut. Something was pressing my eyes shut. There was drowsiness, and then the feeling of my eyes I don't know how to explain it. It's not like you get tired at the end of the day. Not like that at all. And a heaviness, I would walk and every step I was heavy. I was like, something wrong here. I was like, could you just pray for me? And of course, like I said, he's had a very long established relationship with God. And whenever I want to know something right away, all this time up until now, like I will pray about it. And then I will ask my husband to pray about it. And then God tells me. But
beautiful.
it was confirmed that it was a really heavy bad. It was bad. So anyway,
spiritual warfare.
Yes. So I was like, okay, this is what we're dealing with. All right, that's fine. So I would just stop everything and I would start praying and I would just like, all right, that's fine. Bust out some music. I start singing, and singing praises to God. And boy, they hate that. They hate that.
Worship is a weapon.
Yes. And so, and also making sure not to forget when you wake up, pray out, Ephesians 6 verses 13 through 17, pray it out, the armor of God, pray, like read it out, pray it out,
yes,
in Jesus' precious name, according to such and such verses, whatever. Put your full armor of God on you. Thank you for your shield of faith. Whatever. Pray it out and make sure you do that. I know it sounds whatever, but no, it's there for a reason. His word is powerful. And also Psalms 91 every day. So when I wake up, Psalms 91, the Ephesians 6, I read those no matter what.
Those are my two favorites.
Every morning, every night. And listen here, let me tell you something. Even before I go to sleep, I'm sure my husband laughs at me because I put the armor on even before I go. I put the armor on before I go to sleep because I don't want to get attacked in my sleep. Because let me tell you, I've been attacked in my sleep. Real. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. And last night, it was last night or the night before, whenever it was this week, a couple nights ago, I didn't get attacked in my sleep, but it came like a dimension. It was like, it cursed me out. I got the F word, the F-U, demonic thing came in there, but then it was cut off. And I was like, well, thank you there. Because this is what happens. Like, I'll literally close my eyes, and like the other night, I closed my eyes, and I demented looking, scary being, crazy eyes. And I was like, I opened my eyes real quick, and I was like, nope, that's not happening. I got up because I had forgot to put the armor on. So I was like, okay. That's why it's like, don't forget, don't be like a Sunny. So I got up, I was like, I ain't dealing with that. 6, crazy people, but it's very, very real. So it's very real to get protected and put that. That's why he gave us his word. It's living, it's active, it's powerful. So, is there anything else that I need to talk about? Because we were at one point and then I jumped back to that really quick where we were at. But
the self-deliverance is something key.
Yes, the self-deliverance, and then we both did a video together. He did it of that one. I'm trying to remember the name of the ministry, but anyway. So we did that just in case, because you can't just, it's okay to wash again, right? It's okay to get washed again. So we're like, let's just do it just to go.
Cleanse,
I was not trying. I mean, we're talking about decades and decades of nonsense. So I was just trying not to have anything left. That's how bad I wanted to not wanted to have a relationship with God and not have anything in between, Yeah. So this all has happened since April. It's been
wow. It's so amazing because I see the difference. I do. I mean, even though I hadn't seen you for years, like we could just connected out of nowhere, and we're in 2 whole different worlds. I mean, well, not 2 different countries. Now you're in a whole different country. I'm here, but I just seen the change, and God has just transformed you into a new.
It's amazing. And I mean, I'm still, like I said, I'm still growing the relationship because it takes time, you know what I mean? It takes time.
Yes.
Any relationship on earth. And so I'm not expecting him to just appear in the chair next to me. I would love that. But, it's going to take time, but wow, this is amazing. I never thought that he'd be communicating with me. There was the very first thing that happened going back in the beginning after a couple of weeks. I woke up and I'm lying in bed and I'm listening because I'm hearing a man's voice in my talking within myself, within my head. I'm listening to him. I'm trying to think I'm like, what is he saying? Okay, never mind the fact there's something going on there, but I'm just like, what is he saying? And I'm just like, and he was speaking like, it was like he was speaking scripture and praying over me or something. And it was like a mid-tone range voice. Not like a deep voice, but a mid-tone range. But it wasn't super, super loud. But I could hear him talking and praying. I'm like, what in the world is this? So I think, okay, stuff's starting to happen. And I'm listening. I'm literally lying in bed. I'm like awake listening. I'm like, that's so weird. So all of a sudden I'm like, what is this? And as I'm trying to focus on so that was one of the first things that happened. Something about a covenant. Okay, I wrote down. I was like, this is so wild. Yeah, and so every morning I would start waking. Every morning when I wake up, and as soon as I sit up in my bed to go meet him at our appointment, right? All of a sudden, like music starts playing in my head, and it's not normal for me. So like Christian songs, like they would just start. This was before I was really doing praise or anything. It just from the very beginning, I just start playing music in my head. I'm like, okay, I'll go sing that for you if you want me to sing. But anyway, it's been a process of trying to figure things out. But there's all kinds of things that he does that it's just I have to tell you, he's so attentive, and we're all individual, and he knows every hair on our head, and he knows all the little details. He knows the desires of our heart and what we really, really want, even if he does that for us. And he's such a gentleman and so attentive, and he loves so much. And so I can never go back. I told him I can't go back.
He renewed you and took you. Now you're in a whole different level in the realm of the kingdom of God, like where your ears are open to hear now and your eyes to see, because that's what God wants to do, is reveal things to us when we have a relationship with him, which is what you didn't have, and now you have a relationship with him, and that's beautiful. What would you say for the women right now that are struggling with that stronghold of unforgiveness? Like, what would you advise them to do?
I mean, I can't say that I'm an expert, and I can tell you, I mean, maybe go do what I did. It's okay to get frustrated. It's okay to get angry and go to him and just I need you. I need your help. I'm desperate here. And when I cried out to him, I didn't apologize for anything. I'm a sinner, this, that, and the other. I didn't do any of that. I was just like, I had enough of such and such. I had enough. And I was like, this can't go on. And it's okay to sit there and just let it all out. It comes out.
Let it all out. Exactly. You opened up your heart to him. Yeah. You just released all of that, what you felt to him.
Yeah. I was just like, so I guess we hit bottom. I hit bottom. I had several areas of bottom in my life, but that was my okay, stop, sick of it. I'm over it all. I'm not going around doing this. And just and I truly didn't understand at that point in time. I truly did not understand why I didn't have peace. I literally thought that way. Why don't I have peace? You say you give me peace. Why don't I have it? Right? What am I doing wrong? It's like he met me where I was at with the knowledge that I had and the understanding that I had. And even if it was my fault that I didn't spend enough time in his word to even know stuff. Yeah, I knew scripture and I was reading the Bible here and there and doing stuff, but he still, that didn't matter. Even if it was my fault that I didn't know whatever, he still met me where I'm at, and that's where he always meets you where you're at. It don't matter if you're in a bar or strip club or you're doing whatever, he'll meet you wherever you were at. He met me. That time in my life, I mean, let me take a look really quickly here. So I don't want to tell you wrong. Well, all right. Well, let me just say it like that. Back when I was trying to quit drinking, right? I tried and I tried, and I would go on fast. I went on one for 16 days. I went on the fast for 16 days. I thought that's what it was, to quit drinking. And I kept falling back into it. I couldn't quit. So I was just frustrated. And I was like, okay. I was like, you know what? I need your help, and I need you to go through my husband somehow and just tell me, just help me go through him and tell me something. I need to hear from him and tell me, what I need to do to quit. And that's exactly what happened. It doesn't matter that I was a drunkard or any of that. Anyway, I don't know if I'm driving home that point. How amazing. I wanted to mention one thing. So 2 things. But okay, well, I'll mention one first. Okay, so before this testimony, 2 months leading up to this testimony, I have been going through attacks like crazy. Position. I've been getting attacked. I'm somebody who gets sick maybe once every 10 years. And I have been sick with one thing after the next over the course of 2 months. And it's just one attack after another. And so it took me a minute to figure out what was going on so I could pray against it, right? When I was writing the testament, I was initially writing in there, I was writing basically that I grew up without I love yous and the hugs, right? I was writing on it and I was sitting on it. I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't actually say it like that. I don't know. I was trying to figure out how I was going to write this testimony and word it, what I should say and all that. And anyhow, I let it sit for a couple of days like that. And so in the in-between, a couple of days later, in the in-between, like I was telling you how he speaks to me, he woke me up from my dream and audibly, he was like, he told me, I love you, but it was like, it was a whisper, but not low enough. It was not like a really, really quiet whisper. It was a man's voice and it was filled with emotion. And I was like, wow, I literally had put that in there and I had deleted it. Initially, I sat on it and I deleted it, but I didn't get any love yous. He's like, I love you. So it's just, and that's like the second time. But I was like, and it's just like it hits you and you're like, whoa. I felt that, and
he felt what you felt. Like he was healing that part and revealing his love for you that you never had, that you longed for and you never got. But did you put it back in there? I don't remember if you.
I don't think so, but I think I mentioned it verbally in the testimony. Yeah. But I was like, writing the testimony was really hard. Like this whole process, there's been a lot of cleansing going on. You know what I mean? Lots of just the relationship, but I feel like it's been accelerated. It's been very accelerated. And really, you can have as much or as little. I hate to say it like that, but he's there and you can have as much of him as you want or as little. And I mean, I say it like that, just meaning I just mean it in the sense that there's so much more out there. Just go all in. If you commit to 10 minutes a day, that'll make a difference for sure. That's a commitment right there. But this once a week type of thing, I don't always say it, but I heard somebody say it. They're like, God wants a marriage, not a date, or something like that. He doesn't want a date, he wants a marriage. And I was like, that's so true. The way he talks to us. Anyway, but he knows the desires of our heart. And if you go all in and you make the time, and I struggled a long time. Like, how am I going to get up early and do this? Like, I can't get up, whatever. But just do it, okay? Whatever you can do. Late at night, early in the morning, whatever. It's so worth it. And then stuff is going to happen. And wow.
Something's going to happen.
It's just, yeah.
And sometimes we think we want it instantly, where we want to be forgiven. I mean, we it's hard for us to forgive because us women, we hold that grudge more than men.
Gosh, I carried that resentment and grudge. Yeah, it was pretty heavy on me.
So it was something that it didn't happen overnight, but it happened progressively. Some of us, it might happen instant. Some of us, it might happen progressively.
But testimonies where they go to church and as soon as they walk in the door of the church, something hits them and all of a sudden they go to the altar and they're in visions. But we're all uniquely, he created each of our purpose.
Amen. And I'm hoping once we upload this Zoom, we want to hear those that have been impacted by Sunny's testimony. So we would love for you to write to us. If you're hearing this on YouTube, if you're hearing this on hopefully on Instagram but I would love to hear from, and I know we're going to hear, and I will share an email right? I can share an email with them and then have them reach out to you.
I'll be happy to talk to anybody for sure. Amen. There literally is hope. There's hope. There's hope at the end of the tunnel. There is light, and that's Jesus. You'll never regret. You'll never regret.
If he did it with you, he'll meet you where you're at. Like you said, that's something powerful. He'll meet you where you're at. Like some people think they have to be, perfect or like they can't. Like it's like dirty. You come the way you are, and that's it. When you're wearing dirty, he's the one that changes our clothing. We come the way we are with all our dirty laundry, all our dirty.
He came to, he loved us while we were yet sinners. He loved us.
He loved us. That's all I can say. When I go out there in times where I've evangelized, I always say, Jesus, he died for you and he took up all your burdens. He was whipped. He was beaten beyond description.
Yeah. I'm just saying, don't wait. Go to him, seek him out, and he will be found. Okay. He will be found. And he's unreachable, not unattainable.
Yes.
And then there's parties in heaven. Like we're so happy. There's celebrations in heaven, and you just
celebrations. Yeah. And also the women that think that they're beyond helped or beyond worth being helped, but like you said, you've done it all. You went through all. You went from the deepest pit of sin. And there's women right now that are going to listen to this testimony, and they're going to relate to especially the ones that I won't say the word, but you said earlier, unalived what they had in their womb.
Yeah.
Right now, women are going to be healed from that shame and the guilt they felt in Jesus' name. The chains are being broken off of them.